Hi there, Ro here. Welcome to my channel, Ro Can Sew, where I talk about my sewing makes. In this episode, I will be talking about how I made this shirt for my husband. I used red and black linen fabrics, red variegated DMC embroidery floss. The main designs are a collection of symbols requested by husband, and I will list them in the description box below. I cut the fronts, back, and sleeves from the black linen and marked the seam lines with red stitching and serged the edges to reduce fraying whilst couching the design. The marked seam lines helped for pattern placement and being able to properly line up the designs over the side and shoulder seams. I first chalked the symbols outline onto the fabric. I machine couched the floss using my pin tuck foot because after auditioning the few presser feet in my small collection, I found it to be the one that worked best for me. I laid the embroidery floss over the chalked lines and carefully couched with a very small zigzag stitch in black thread. I chose to start and stop my thread within the seam allowances so as not to disrupt the pattern. Once I couched the outline of the symbols, I would go back to the cutting table and chalk an internal design line. Then I would return to the machine to couch more with the embroidery floss, then go back to the cutting table to chalk more lines, and I just continued those steps until the symbols themselves were eventually filled in. There was a lot of careful attention, checking and double checking that the design lines would connect at the seam lines once the shirt was sewn together. The pocket was tricky, and none of the lines are perfect. Eventually, the symbols themselves started to get filled in, and then I drew more design lines filling in the space between the symbols. I used variegated embroidery floss so it gives the overall image an ombre look, which I like. Once I had finished couching all the pieces, I began regular shirt construction. The shoulder, side, and sleeve seams were all sewn in my favorite flat felled method. I chose to accent the sleeve hem and the button bands with the red linen. For the sleeves, I sewed a strip of red linen between the sleeve and the black linen cuff. I stitched all 3 layers together, then I folded back the linen cuff away from the sleeve and I pressed it well. I pressed under along the red stitching guideline and then pressed under again at the chalk line to create a cuff, and I sewed that in place through all layers with black thread. I used the same concept with the button bands, sandwiching a red linen strip between the band and the shirt to give the button band an overall outlined look. I made use of the red linen selvage by sandwiching it between the collar pieces, so the final collar would be trimmed with a slight red fringe. And the back collar stand has a hidden message, an international Morse code that I wrote using French knots. And I don't have any experience with French knots, so they're not perfect. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this overview. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, I will leave you with more images. Bye!